from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, we can communicate directly. If you type your question or comment into whatever platform you're watching on, it will show up here in my chat room. Today is the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States. And so I imagine that there probably aren't a lot of you watching to type into the chat room, but if you're here, hello. And if you're not, perhaps you'll be watching later in the recorded version of the show. One of the nice things about this program is we have a live version where we can speak live, but also it's still around afterwards if you cannot see the live broadcast. Oh, and hello to Sheila in the chat room. It's good to see you. And hello to Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you. And Thanksgiving is an interesting holiday from a pagan point of view because of some of the things that are often attached to it. And I thought I would start our conversation there. I think the idea of a holiday with agrarian origins, originally a harvest celebration, giving thanks for the harvest and the crops, and a time to stop and think about the things in life that we should be grateful for. I think this is a very good holiday. I see absolutely nothing wrong with it. I see no reason why pagans should not embrace it as a civil holiday. We have, in our annual liturgical cycle, we have sabbats that have some of this same flavor, but I think that having a civil holiday that people of all different religions can take part in, focusing on gratitude is a good idea. And I think that we should embrace this holiday in exactly that point of view. Now, the problem with the holiday is that a lot of people have tried to put religious connotations on it far beyond that, tried to make it into a historic holiday, celebrating people who, in my opinion, do not particularly deserve to be celebrated. And those connotations of the holiday, I think we must avoid. If you look at this holiday as a commemoration of the Puritan movement, keep it far away from me. I have no two words of positive things that I can say about the Puritan movement. In fact, I can't think of a single word positive to say about that movement. I think it was incredibly destructive, incredibly negative, both at the time and in its legacy today. Even if someone wanted to say that they were anti-monarchist, they certainly were not pro-democracy. And what they did when they got rid of the British monarchy briefly was just set up a different monarchy based in their own tenets. So I don't think you can say that positive about them either. So as far as I'm concerned, to the extent that I celebrate Thanksgiving, it has nothing to do with those people. Certainly has nothing to do with the racist elements that are often attached with this holiday as well. So for me, none of that has anything to do with my understanding of this holiday. To me, it's a time to stop and think about gratitude, to stop and think about actual Thanksgiving in the current day, in our current circumstances, and as an agrarian, as a continuation of ancient agrarian customs. And hello to Arlene in the chat room. Hello to Julia in the chat room. The idea of taking time for Thanksgiving at the end of the harvest is very ancient. As I say, we do have it as part of our liturgical cycle in various places, although not in quite the same ways. And I think that as a civil holiday that can transcend all these barriers, it's a good thing. Hello to Janet in the chat room. It's good to see you. So in that sense, I do believe in celebrating Thanksgiving, and I do, in fact, celebrate it. You may have noticed my my turkey post of the other day with the hashtag Name Your Turkey, and I'm a great believer um, in the idea of naming your turkey, if that's what you're going to have, um, in order to personalize it. To me, I think very often in the pagan community, people often give a pagan overlay to the ways that Christians commonly do things. And oh, hello to my niece Lori in the chat room. It's good to see you, Lori. I think the Thanksgiving blessing is a very good example of that. My practice of many, many years, which I highly encourage to everyone else, is that when I offer a Thanksgiving blessing before the feast, I am offering thanks specifically to the spirits of the food that is going to be consumed because they were all formerly alive and they have made um, the ultimate sacrifice so that we can continue to thrive and grow. Hello to Lynn in the chat room. And I think that this is a very good time for us to stop and acknowledge that life feeds on death and that everything that we eat, whether plant or animal, was formerly alive and has given its life, um, arguably intentionally from the soul level, arguably not intentionally from the conscious level, so that we may continue. And I think that we should acknowledge this. And for me, one of the primary ways to do that is by naming the turkey. Where did the idea of naming the turkey come from? Well, it comes from Bloom County. As far as I know, years ago in the 1970s, they had a cartoon strip where one of the characters, will tell you how long it's been since, oh, it's Zonker. His name was Zonker. But he was asked to give the Thanksgiving blessing. And he referenced the spirit of the turkey who had only just days before been happily living on the farm and blah, blah, blah. This was portrayed for comedic effect, but I remember thinking at the time, no, this is exactly what we should be doing. We should be considering that that turkey was alive until recently, and that the reason it is dead is us. And as we consume its flesh, not that we should feel bad for that, but that we should feel grateful for that, because so often we act as though the things that we eat just come magically into being in the supermarket. And that's not true at all. Whether they were plants growing in the fields that were cut down for our sake or animals growing on the farm who were cut down for our sake, they all have the same origin. And I think that this is the particular time that we should acknowledge that, should be mindful of that, and not act like these things come from nowhere. So I'm a great believer in naming the turkeys. You may have seen the two turkeys on my website named Priscilla and Polydor. I believe that Lady K followed, or Lady Kai followed the example by naming her turkeys Bosco and something else with a B. And I think this is highly desirable. Hello to Eddie in the chat room. It's good to see you. So, although Percival and Priscilla are not going to have their, or Polydor and Priscilla are not going to have their moment of fate today, they are, I believe, for the feast at the auction house at a later date. Being mindful that these were living creatures, I think, is very important and something certainly that the Christian world does not do. I think that we need to do this. It is a traditional thing for us that we often ignore. Now, Laurie says this is the same with asking permission and thanking the spirit of the Yule tree when you cut it down. And yes, it is exactly the same thing. It's the same as if you're going to make a wand and you go to actually find it somewhere in nature. If you take it from a living tree, you should ask permission before you do it and give thanks after you have done so. We must acknowledge that we are not the only living things in the universe, and that everything we are interacting with is also alive, and we should be thankful for this interaction and for the fact that that so many things have given their lives for our lives. In ancient days, we would have acquired these foods largely through hunting or through gathering, and I believe that we would have given thanks then. we should do so now, and not to some abstract power. Though certainly we should be thankful to the power of the earth and the power of the universe, but specifically to the spirits of the game, the spirits of the animals, the spirits of the plants themselves. And so if you ask me what should set a pagan Thanksgiving celebration apart, this is what I would tell you. And I will once again mention the hashtag name your turkey for this reason. Sometimes this makes people feel squeamish. And if so, that tells you something you need to work on, that you are not mindful of where your food is coming from. I think a lot of people, even in our pagan community, are not mindful of this. They are acting as if the food that they are eating was never alive and has no spirit. But it was, and it does. And we should be mindful that this is part of the cosmic web of nature. You know, one of the people most influential on my way of thinking is Lady Bitterwind. And this is a point she would have been right there making, that we cannot properly say we worship or honor nature if we do not acknowledge the cycle of predation and prey, because it's absolutely part of nature at even the simplest microscopic levels. And Julia says, this is why I'm vegetarian. And that's wonderful if that's a choice that you make for yourself. But remember, the plants also have spirits. And the more we learn about them, the more we learn they're more like us than we like to give them. We've formerly wanted to give credit. We know now, for example, that trees have ways of communicating, which spiritually we've said for a very long time, but science is now catching up with that. I see no reason that isn't true for every kind of plant. We just perhaps have not scientifically discovered how. The reason I'm not vegetarian is the realization that plants are also alive. And so to me, it makes no difference what I'm eating. It was all formerly alive. Even if I were eating the new so-called clean meat that was never a living animal, I don't know that I could agree that it was not a living organism. There too, a sacrifice has been made. So whether it's a turkey or a Brussels sprout, I would say to you, remember, it was alive. And it has given its life for you. And for it, its life was no less important than yours is to you. And be thankful, be mindful. And remember that. And when you give your reasons for being thankful, if you do so, the sacrifice of other living things for your continued existence is something you should be thankful for, because it happens every day that you remain alive. Now, of course, we also do this ourselves. And with our current burial customs in the United States, we don't do it as obviously as we once did, because, you know, before the age of embalming, um, and for that matter, separate from cremation, our bodies went to feed many living organisms that don't necessarily get that food now, but our bodies are also full of living organisms that are living off of us at the same time we are living off of others. We have all kinds of fauna in our digestive system, for example, that live from us as we live from plants and animals. And are they mindful of the fact that there is a living being that they gain their sustenance from? Probably not. I don't know if they have the minds to do that, but spiritually, I would hope that they are at their higher spiritual level. Everything that exists is dependent on everything else that exists to continue living. And if there is one thing that we really should be emphasizing in paganism more than we do, it is this. So whether vegetarian or carnivorous or fruitarian, and I will leave them to represent themselves, but whatever dietary form you're following, something is giving its life for you to continue living. Even if you're one of those people who think you can survive on just breathing air, remember things live in the air. Um, it may look empty to us, but it's not empty in reality. And this is part of understanding what life is. It is not being separate from nature, but being very literally intertwined with it at every level of our being, from the living creatures that we feed upon and which sometimes feed on us, to the living creatures within our literal bodies that quite literally feed on us every day. And I don't see this as being anything but an example of just how wonderful and complex the web of life is. That Goddess, however you want to phrase the great power of the universe, has found so many ways to express the force of life and find ways for it to survive in this universe. Um, and we are so integrated and so concerned with the political aspects of our lives and the social interactions of our lives. But there are millions of organisms living within you right now who know nothing about any of that and have their own worlds that are sustained by ours, but have little knowledge of it, just as our world is sustained by the world of plants and animals, and we have little real knowledge of how they live and how they interact. Now, I know there are some people who do not like the idea of domestication. They usually mean that only for animals, but agriculture is the domestication of plants. My thought has always been this was a bargain that we made, and I believe both sides made the bargain, that we would provide a decent life until the end. Um, and I think that we are often breaking that today. And I think we need to move to an agricultural model that acknowledges the bargain um, that is part of domestication, that for giving their lives this way, they will get a decent life until that time. I think I'm very much an objector to industrial farming as it's usually expressed. I think that that is something we really do need to address. Um, it's something we should also be thinking about at this time of year, at this particular holiday. We might want to consider how we're treating those animals that we are eating. Because at present, we generally don't treat them very well, although that has changed to some extent. But I'd like to see a little bit more reference to the quality of their lives. And I do not think the answer to that is simply exterminating all of them either, because I don't see that as being a particularly positive answer in itself. Um, so that kind of concludes my speechy portion of this presentation on the subject of the interplay of life and death. But I think we must always remember that life and death are intimately linked, and they dance together constantly. And that if we're going to enjoy one, we must acknowledge the other, and particularly how they support each other. Now, otherwise, in this holiday, there's another very important aspect that I think we should take some time and think about, and that is the whole idea of gratitude itself. And this is another thing that I think that as pagans we don't give enough attention to, although some of us do. Years ago, a lot of people talked more about the idea of having a gratitude list, which I think is a very good thing. And this is to take time each day to just make a list of things you're grateful for in your life. And, people generally find that even if they're not at the good point, the best point in their lives, there's always something to be grateful for. And stopping to think about it can really change how you look at your life in general. So often we only look at the problems in our lives. Taking time to give thanks for the things that we are grateful for, I think really changes how we look at life, changes how we look at ourselves, and also changes some of our decisions. So I strongly encourage you to take time to look at the things you're grateful for in life. Take time really every day to do this. I think you'll be happy that you do. But especially at a holiday such as this one, um, take time to think about the good things that you have, because everyone has them, even if they also may have many problems. There will still be some good things. Um, and the more that you stop to look at those good things, the less power the bad things will have in your way of looking at life. So I very strongly encourage that too as part of this holiday. And if you ask me why this is a holiday worth continuing, shorn of the historical associations some try to associate with it, this is one of the reasons. Not only to be mindful of how we live, but also of the good things in our lives. And it may be the people that you love, um, may simply be the fact that you're still alive. It may be having a roof over your head. It may be having a comfortable home. For some people, it will be a very long list. For other people, it may be a much shorter one. But for most people, you'll find it's a longer one than you expect. And I cannot too strongly encourage you to take time to think of what you are grateful for in life, and to look at it honestly. And I think too often people treat their lives as if it were Festivus, the time for the listing of their grievances, instead of the time for listing the things that they are grateful for. And I don't think that leads to a good end ever. I think in general, the less we think about grievances and the more we think about gratitude, the happier we're going to be. And what else are we trying to achieve in life, if not happiness and the success of the things that we hope for? To think only of your grievances is to think of all the things that can stop you, all the things that make you angry and bitter and hold you back. Um, these things serve little real use in our lives. But to stop and think about the good things, the things that we have to be grateful for, helps us to see where we can more productively put our efforts, helps us to see the good things that we do have and that we have brought into our lives, helps us to see the people we can most appreciate, and many other positive things, and puts us on a much more positive level for going forward. Um, and I think this is much to be desired. Um, Not to frown on the Festivus celebration, um, but I think that, again, focusing on the good things in life will get you a lot farther than focusing on the bad. I look around the world and I see a lot of people constantly obsessed with arguments and disagreements and grievances and unable to move past these. And I think that's very sad, because almost always there are so many good things around them, so many good things in their life they could be focusing on, so many good things they could be doing. And instead, they're using their energy that way. Um, Particularly if we look at, which I generally try not to do, the news cycle, where what bleeds leads. And it's very easy to see there the effect of putting the emphasis on everything negative. Um, you could easily walk away from the news cycle thinking there's nothing positive in this world, when in fact there are many things. And speaking of positive things, let us take a moment to acknowledge a very positive story regarding the Southern Delta Church of Wicca, um, and the Reverend Terry Riley and his wonderful group of people who, for many years, um, have been working to build a wonderful, positive ministry based in Arkansas. And one of the things they do is they grow food to feed their local community through food pantries. And recently, they received a very large federal grant to increase this activity, which is a wonderful statement um, on what is possible for our community if we choose to do good things. And I want to take this moment to congratulate Reverend Terry, whom I have the honor of knowing, um, and all of his people for the wonderful things they have done. Um, Now, Lady Lori says in the chat room, something fun to do is at Samhain, the start of the liturgical new year. Make a gratitude list, and at Thanksgiving, go back over it and contemplate it and add new things you're grateful for. And at the next new moon, do a burning and burn the list with the intention for your gratefulness and gratitude to carry through the year. I think that's a wonderful thing. I highly recommend it. And anything that will carry forth um, the attitude of gratefulness and mindfulness, I think, is highly desirable. And, there is a saying from a different religion that it's better to give than to receive. But, I think in general that really is true. I think that when we do good things, when we stop and think about the good things in our life and try to multiply good things in the world, I think we're both happier and more satisfied than merely receiving good things. Um, Earlier in this year, I had certain people say to me that they felt I had been foolish for the amount of time and effort I had given to others over the years, rather than taking more for myself. Which, considering some things that some of these same people have said since, takes on a very interesting point of view. But I want to stop and say that I do not feel foolish for it at all. Um, I will have to say that I have taken time this year to look at some of my choices, but no, I don't feel at all that I have given too much. If anything, I wish to continue giving to the world and to other people. And, I think in the long run, we will clearly see um, the effect of these two attitudes, whether it's foolish to give to others or whether it's wise to give to others. And I think for myself, I see evidence every day that the sacrifices I have made in life were well worth it. And I encourage you too, even if it's a sacrifice for you, to give to others, to work with others, to work for others, and above all, to work to build a better world. Um, there's a selfish reason because it's your world that you live in too. And if you make it a better world, it makes a better world for you. But at the same time, simply the act of doing it, simply the act of knowing you're making things better, is worth having just for itself, even if you don't personally see that result. And I cannot tell you how satisfying it is when you see that something you've done has made someone else's life better. I've had many, many occasions to see that over the world, and over the years. And I would have to say, of all the things I've done in my life, that is the most satisfying, to know that I have um, helped other people on both very personal and universal occasions and around the world. And, I could have made very different choices in life, but I'm pretty happy with the one I've made. It certainly did not leave me a wealthy man, but I've done that in my time. And I feel much better being someone who gives to make a better world. And I think you will find the same. So, with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. And again, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and encourage you to be mindful of all the sacrifices made for your part um, by other creatures in this world, as well as the fact that you yourself make sacrifices for others, and that this is part of the nature of life and part of the glory of life. And I wish you a happy holiday. I will see you again tomorrow when we'll be talking about the pagan world auction going on this weekend. And for now, let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for the sacrifices you have made for us in our lives. Beloved ancestors, we thank you for the hardships of your life that have given greater ease to ours. We thank you for blazing the trail for us in our lives. We know that this was not always easy and often very difficult, and we thank you with great love and respect. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, we thank you for the web of life and for the intricacy of the dance between life and death, between nourishment and sustenance. We wish to take this moment to acknowledge all those within that web who play their role with grace and dignity. And we thank you, beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God. And let us take this moment to consider our own role, and let us make a resolution to do all that is in our power to make a better world, and to be willing to give to others to make that better world. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we know you're always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I give thanks for you. I give thanks for you who are watching this program. I give thanks for those who watch sometimes. I give thanks for all the people who touch my life in good and positive ways, and I hope that I touch your life in good and